Okay, so my background was in journalism. For many years I'd worked in newspapers, magazines, and I also worked as a radio producer. But I always had an itch I wanted to scratch, which was to write fiction and write creatively. So I did a series of courses in the Irish Writers' Centre. I had a play that was produced. I've written a book that I have with an agent. And about 10 years ago, I attended an open session in the Irish Writers' Centre. It was an open day where Bridgie de Courcy, who is the series producer of Fair City, was in attendance, and she mentioned that they are always receptive to being approached by potential writers. So I followed up on that. I approached her and I got on board. I did a workshop, and it was over the course of a number of weeks, and you had to write a script, and out of that I was invited to come in and work in the story room in Fair City. So I've been doing that now since 2017. I suppose it's kind of, there's a pragmatism attached to it, that there is actually work going in the area of writing for television. I was going to the Irish Writers' Centres, as I say. There would have been poets there. In many senses though, I had to relearn a lot of, or learn new skills, just in terms of the structure. I'm sure if you know what you're studying, you will have encountered how structured, the story arc, the 3-act structure, the 5-act structure. That would all have been totally new to me. So again, I would have been writing to a certain formula, particularly when I was writing for tabloids, and the inverted triangle, and we'd have a lot of rules in journalism. They're quite different in screenwriting. So I suppose it was just transposing the transferable skill. I suppose would be being able to write under some time pressure and being able to write to a certain formula. I suppose one of the biggest things is you get notes. And notes are basically a critique of your work, and you have to take those on board. So you really have to be prepared for that. Sometimes they can be quite punishing and they can seem very negative, but actually these are people who have been working in the industry a long time, so you have to totally go with it and take them on board. Sometimes you have to take a deep breath when you get a note that it's like, you can feel like it's thrashing your work. And if you've been off writing in a room on your own and it's been quite a solitary experience, that can be difficult. But I suppose the main thing to take out of it is it's a very much a collaborative process. So you have to totally be prepared to buy into that. Yeah, for sure. As I said earlier, when you were asking for what advice you'd give people about trying to get into the industry, 100%. Like it is a great way to get your foot in the door. Be persistent, be resilient, knock on lots of doors, be prepared to pitch in, to come in at entry level, to do possibly menial, boring work. I've seen a lot of guys come in maybe straight out of IADT. A couple of them have been out of coming into the story room, and they're doing administrative work, and you can tell that these are very creative guys who hopefully in 5 or 10 years time they'll be off doing great things, writing their own stuff and producing, directing their own projects. But for now, that's their way of getting their foot in the door. So that would be my big piece of advice, to just keep knocking on those doors and be persistent.
I began my career in music, I think to everybody's surprise, actually at a quite advanced age of I think I was probably 21 or 22. I'd been in school and I'd taught myself the guitar because I thought that would be a great way to make people like me. But it didn't really work like that. I was a very uncool teenager, and so I was interested in music. And I kind of grew up in the moment of punk, and just after punk happening, which is like the late 70s, early 80s, which was very empowering for kind of nerdy people like me, because I kind of, you felt you could, you didn't have to be a cool person, but I hadn't actually made that leap. And then I'd done law, and then I'd got my degree, and then I went in to become trained as a solicitor's apprentice, and after about 3 weeks I thought, I'm not going to be a solicitor. And then there was a 3-year apprenticeship, so I kind of managed to get a 6-month placement in New York. And while I was there, where nobody knew me, there was a bar with a piano in it near my apartment, and I started going down there and I started singing along with the piano player in harmony. And all these Americans came up and said, "You have a beautiful Irish tenor." And so nobody in Ireland had ever said that to me. So I finished my stint in New York at the end of 1985. I came back to finish out the last 6 months of my apprenticeship. I started the Fat Lady Sings in March '86 with one person I knew a bit, and the other two I didn't really know at all. I qualified as solicitor in May 86, I gave up that day, and then in June 86 I made everybody else give up their jobs and move with me to London to be in the band, because I thought I have to go somewhere else where nobody knows me. And then I was in London for 8 years with Fat Lady Sings, and you know, that's how I got into it, was by singing in a place where nobody knew me. But I'd stumbled, after I split the Fat Lady Sings, into a job in Dublin in advertising, and in that job I discovered that what I was really good at was writing TV ads. And I think partially because songwriting is a really visual medium, because you don't have many words in a lyric, so you're always looking for a visual image, you know, as a kind of a someone left a cake out in the rain kind of, if you think about, like, nouns are really good in songs, because you know, it makes you you know, I bet you look good on the dance floor. So I wrote a load of TV ads, most of which had no dialogue. I wrote 5 ads for Guinness, and the first 4 of them just had Michael Fassbender saying sorry. That was the only word of dialogue in the first 4 ads. And on one of those Guinness shoots, I turned to the line producer and I said, oh, I'd love to try directing someday. And he said, well, get me a script by next Wednesday, because that's the closing date for an Irish Film Board Short Shorts film scheme, which is 3-minute films. And the thing was, by that point, advertising is the most incredible training for making movies, because unlike a screenwriter, you're expected to go to all the shoots. You're expected to go to all the castings. You choose the director. You have directors audition to you to get chosen to direct the ads. And you spend weeks and weeks in the post house and in the edit suite, because you're the person who has to bring it back to the client. So just by osmosis you learned a lot about filmmaking. So that came up with this idea of this wealthy young man working in Wall Street who some disaster had happened to him, and he'd come out onto the Williamsburg Bridge in New York to throw himself to his death. And as he's just getting ready to jump, a bum comes up, a homeless person, and says, you know, you're a jumping man, can I have your money first? So I thought that was a really good setup for a story. And I wrote that script. And then I put it into Screen Ireland for, like, funding, and I didn't even get interviewed. Didn't get anywhere. So I put it away for 2 years. I put it into Screen Ireland again, or at the Irish Film Board again, and it was exactly the same script. But this time, I guess the people who read it were different people, and they did give me an interview. But then it became clear that the money, going to shoot it in New York, was never going to work. And so I just changed it to Ireland. And the only words of dialogue I changed was when Proby, the homeless guy, says man, I had him say boy. I think myself you only need 3 key skills to make films. And if you have these 3 key skills, and plus energy and passion, you can make a film. And if you don't, you can't. The most important thing is casting. It's more important than anything else. So, and it's on both sides of the camera. You're in a collaborative art form. Who you choose to collaborate with is the difference between success and failure. Who your DOP is in particular, who your editor is, who your producer is, and who your first AD is. Those 4 roles in particular. You want allies and people who you really have shorthand and can communicate with. Story is really important. You don't necessarily have to write stories yourself, though every director is kind of a writer. Every editor is kind of a writer. Your story is written and rewritten by at least 3 different stages or 4 different stages. When you're writing it, when you're casting it, when you're shooting it, when you're editing it. It keeps on being rewritten. And first of all, you have to get really, really cool about that. Like, it's brilliant to write a script. You have to give yourself a little moment of celebration, give yourself a glass of wine. That script is not going to be what the film is. And then the third thing is politics. So there's going to be, most people who go to film school probably will never make a film. And the main reason is politics. Because they can't work out how to get 200 people to all point in the same direction at the same time. And that is, everybody I know who's successful in film has their own way of working with other people. I think being truthful and really believing in the project that you're working on, and if you can transmit that belief to others and make them care about it as much as you, and make them care about yourself, like make them want to do it for you, that's a really big thing. So those would be my three things.
I was going to college. I had only 2 years into college, and I got word that Disney was hiring. And one of the girls said, "Would you like to go down and apply?" 4 of us went down, and they ended up hiring 2 of us. Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before you were born.
Yeah. I've seen it. It's great. Great job. And
it wasn't a huge success, I understand.
Right, but it was a lovely film.
It had Ivan Durrell did the backgrounds, and they were just beautiful.
Yeah.
So it was a good experience, and I was young. I would say you need to draw every day. You need to study animals and people, mostly for animation. Learn how people move, animals move, and just be very good. I just think animation is beautiful, all the Disney ones in particular. And for young people, the anime ones are very interesting.
Yeah.
I've seen a few. They're a bit strange to me, but beautiful. And I happened to be with a group with Sullivan Bluth. We went to Ireland as a studio to help train Irish. And they did a documentary on that group of people that I was part of, bringing animation to Ireland. And since then, I understand there are more studios now. Hopefully, it'll continue to grow. And I think there are a lot of people who want to go back to the old style of animating and having things hand inked, hand done. That I've heard that as well.
Yeah, I've heard about it. Yeah, I've heard about Sullivan Booth, and it is an amazing story. I think in the 1980s they came over, and
86.
Yeah.
Of 86.
Yeah, that was our big start in animation, and now we have a number of studios now. So
I'm surprised, amazed, and thankful that I was part of that.
Yeah. You worked on the animated Lord of the Rings.
I did.
Yeah. Could you tell me a bit about, was that Ralph Bakshi, that version?
Yeah, that was Ralph Bakshi.
Yeah.
I was on loan to him from Bill Melendez, who did all the Peanuts cartoons. And it was an experience. It was a year when, I shouldn't say things, a lot of the animators, we'd spend the whole night there sometimes. Or the animators would just sleep in the stairwells because they were up early working. It was a different time. Ralph Bakshi was an enigma. I was always a little bit afraid of him. He was a personality. And he was the first person in my life that when he walked in the room, I felt him fill the whole room. You know, I knew then what charisma was because he did fill the whole room. I think just working on Peanuts for 8 years.
Right.
I enjoyed Bill Melendez. He was a wonderful boss. And I had close friends. In the end I ended up working for Nickelodeon on some of the films there. I did a little bit of everything. I did a little bit of drawing. I got a little taste of what that would be like with a pencil. And I may have ended up just being in animation, but at the time I was hired, they said, we're not going to spend the money training women because they end up getting married and leaving the industry. That's how I ended up working in the finished artwork. I just think that I think you should study. It's good that you're going to college. I would go to a good art institute or a Disney institute if that's what you want to learn. I just think you just have to be so into it. Just love it. If you love animation, you'll find a way to get into it. My hint is to be a good team player. Work with people. Sometimes you get personalities that are just difficult to deal with. So be a nice person. Most of the people that I knew were easygoing, nice, genuinely nice people. And it's nice to work with good people.